Hi, Kanita.
Hey, hi.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Dave?
Very well.
Good. And rest of our team members.
Hello.
Hello, Reginald. I've never met you before, so greetings.
Greetings. Call me Reggie.
Reggie, sounds good. Call me Kanita. There's no short form. Unless you're my husband, and then he calls me babe, but that's a whole nother show.
We'll leave that one alone.
Dr.
What's that?
Blaylock? Blaylock.
Hi, Jennifer. Your mic's not on.
Hi, Reggie. Good morning, Kanita, or good afternoon. Good to see
Yes.
you. Where are you both from? Where are you at right now?
Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Awesome.
Virginia.
Excellent. I'm in Florida, Sarasota. So good to see you all.
We're all over.
Nice. What's the weather like down there?
You know, we've been very, very blessed. I've appreciated the opportunity to go outside. I had a 5-mile walk this morning already, but it was a little overcast yesterday. It may rain again today, but that's okay.
All
We have a
right.
lot of sunshine. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, I miss the sunshine.
That's the Michigan spring for you, Kanita.
Yeah, right. With a little bit of pandemic mixed in.
As you know, it's called Michigan Gray. So
Yep. Good deal. And how are you doing down there, David?
oh, pretty good. Little drama this morning. We had a stray, very beautiful Alaskan husky show up at our doorstep last night at 11,
Oh, wow.
and we took it to. It's not chipped, no collar. Checked out at the vet. Well, I was trying to find its owner through Facebook, etc. But we'll see where that goes to. We have 2 other dogs, by the way. We have 2 other
Wow.
dogs. So we'll have to see how this one plays out.
Yeah. How do you lose a dog like a husky? That's a little big.
Yeah, it is. But we heard that they are runners. They are escape artists and they are runners. So
Oh, really? Okay.
yes, that's what the vet said anyway.
Huh. We don't have a dog, so it's a whole different world. It's all good.
So Dave, is my mic loud enough?
It is fine, Reggie. Looking dapper, let's say.
Look, I put it on just for you guys.
Oh, no.
I'm
Do
hot.
I need to go get a jacket?
No.
No,
These are my earrings.
Matter of fact, I'm great.
My daughter had to videotape a speech for class. She's a senior at Texas Southern University, and she sent it to me, and she knew I was going to be upset with her because I wanted her to wear professional clothing, and she said, I made a compromise, Mom. She had her soccer uniform on, and she put a blazer over it. I was so mad at that child. I said, girl, okay, I see you, Bailey. I see you.
Oh, so funny.
Good morning from Sydney. It's 3 a.m. I'm just wearing my t-shirt and shorts. Sorry, I'm not appropriately dressed.
Hello, Martin.
It's all good. Good morning.
It's all good.
I was going to join the one at midnight and I set my alarm for 1 o'clock and then I realized I'd actually got my time wrong and missed the first one. So I made sure I stayed up for the next one.
Oh, thank you.
value.
What time is it there?
3 a.m.
Oh, wow. You are committed.
You sure are.
Anything to help, especially Dr. Joseph, who's become one of my closest friends.
Oh,
Because-
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. I'm Kanita, by the way. Nice
Good
to meet you.
Kanita. Good to meet you.
I'm in
Let
Grand
me
Rapids,
tell you,
Michigan.
Martin, a bar was set very high at the last session, so we got our work cut out for us.
I
Uh-oh.
have every confidence in you. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
All right.
Hello, Joseph.
Hello. I'm so sorry. I was trying to turn my computer on. It was giving me some issues.
Oh, no.
Well, thank you so much for coming. Well, these are just friendly faces. So I thought I was going to get new people. So it's great to have you all. All right. Okay.
It's great to be seen as a friendly face.
Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
And some of us are new to each other, but it's good to see you too, Joseph.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Even Martin is here too. Martin, from where are you?
Sydney, it's 3 a.m.
Sydney, Australia. Good to have you, Martin.
My pleasure.
I'm so glad that that you're here. Our our panelists, the great panelists that are here waiting to teach us some lessons, and we are ready to go. And you can see my co-moderator, Dr. Jennifer Blackton. She's here already. So she's a very friendly face, and more importantly, she's very good in the area we are in. So let us begin. And I'm gonna begin by just saying that a couple of things, especially when you are all friends. The first thing is that we're gonna have the panelists introduce themselves as well as tell us what they do and how what they do aligns with our vision and the fight we are waging for equity and social justice for all. And then after that, Jennifer and I would ask maybe questions based on your responses, and then from there we move to the audience asking them questions, and then they'll further let us know more, and then finally they will give us some closing statements that would give us something to go home with. So with that, I think I'm going to hand over to Jennifer to introduce herself, then we begin.
Well, thank you, Joseph. It's so great to see everybody. And as you mentioned, we had, and David mentioned, we had a wonderful and very lively discussion earlier today with Saba and myself, talking about really the tenets of the Systemic Diversity Inclusion Group and the vision going forward. We focused a lot on education and inclusivity. Tabitha brought in some great points as well. And so I think as we look at sort of the collective spirit that has been inspired by our current global connectivity, and that we're all, we've got that commonality of COVID-19 and sort of the disruption and impact to our lives. This gives us a great opportunity to look at where is some of the division that, predated that. What are the things that have kept us apart and kept us from being as inclusive and collaborative and empowering and supportive of one another, so that we can continue and leverage this great spirit of support and collaboration going forward and in rebuilding and changing the narrative. So we're extremely excited. And I'd love to ask the panel to share your story, share a little bit about why SDIG is very important to you and how the work that you're doing will help promote our vision, mission, and ideals.
Thank you so much. Hey, Reggie's here. Reggie, how are you?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Doctor?
Good. I'm so excited. Well, as my partner, Dr. Jennifer, had indicated, we're going to move straight to you, the panelists, telling us about yourself, your work, which we all know that you're pushing on the frontier. So just give us ideas as to how you see diversity. I know that one of the people I thought knows about diversity much more than most people keeps asking me, oh, I'm not a professional there, but I say, well, you've managed organizations, you dealt with it, you kind of quelled problems that could stem from, such unknown. That in my dictionary that you are able to, hence you're able to get human beings together, help them solve problems and move them in the right direction. So that to me is wonderful. So having said that, could you begin to tell us yourself? How about we begin with Kenita, please?
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Joseph, and the rest of the team. I'm really excited to be part of this panel here today. So I'm and part of the work that we're all doing collectively. First, let me say I'm so excited that this team has been pulled together with the work that we do through Systemic Diversity and Inclusion Group. I think it's long overdue. It's really important that more minds come together and we're able to really connect and share and be inclusive and not allowing, you know, the rest of us to be in our own little pods or silos, if you will. So like I said, my name is Kenita Scripsma, and I'm actually the founder and CEO of SEMA Global Consulting. And we are passionate about promoting inclusion through cultural education with workshops, which we take into consideration groups of 5 or more people. And then we also do transformational coaching, where I work one-on-one with somebody to help them really identify their own cultural bent and the impact that it has in the society that they're in. And what we're discovering with the work that we're doing is that people aren't as self-aware as they think they might be. And if we just stick to the race conversation, to me, I've discovered that that's very divisive. And so I got really passionate about inclusion because I really felt like there was another approach that we could get at this and continue the work, right? So the race work starts the work, the race conversation starts the work, but the rest of it kind of helps us go further. So my story actually started in India. I was born in East India 50 plus years ago. And then my family moved to Canada, where I lived most of my education life in very diverse communities. My school was very multi-ethnic. I really appreciated the experience we had growing up with immigrant families. We were an immigrant family. And so just having that experience growing up really gave me a bigger picture of the globe, of the world, and of the community that I was living in. And then after college, I moved here to the US, which gives me my third culture, if you will, from India to Canada to the US. And so bringing that third culture perspective to the table, I think is really crucial, because as our world continues to grow and we have so many, just so many individuals in multiracial relationships, and then biracial kids being born, and, you know, just to kind of help people get a better handle on their cultural bent and how it starts to morph and shape, really gives me a lot of passion to do this work. We have 3 biological sons, and they all identify differently. So from a race standpoint, that also then forces the conversation to say, how can we make this place different for them? My husband is white Dutch American, and perhaps you picked that up with the last name of Scripsma. It's a Dutch last name, and I am not Dutch, so let's just break up that confusion right now. And so for them to identify differently in their own personal stories is really empowering, which meant I really needed to understand cultural stuff from a variety of culture groups, and then to empower them so that they can be ready and better served in the world that they're growing up in. So SEMA Global Consulting, you can check out our website for more of the work we do, but being part of SDIG has been really valuable because I've met some amazing people, and we've also been able to grow in relationship and network, and just in knowledge. You guys are so great to learn from, and I'm really excited to be part of this. Did I miss anything, Joe?
You did well.
Oh, thank you. Just want to make sure.
If you think you missed anything because I couldn't get into your head, you will have opportunity to say that at a later time.
Oh, okay.
Cornell Harris, could you go, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just recently retired from the Marine Corps back this past year on 1 October after a 30-year career. And I would tell you that my experience prior to the military, I'll say it was very narrow, right? So I saw the world in black and white because that's what I grew up in. So after joining the military and traveling and meeting people and leading people, I started to realize that there's so much more. As a matter of fact, I think my biggest revelation was I need to get out of my own way. Once I got out of my own way and realized that I didn't have the answer to how everything in life should go, it just opened up my mind. And so I love learning. I love experiencing people and trying to understand their perspective. And so now we start talking about just diversity. Because I retired as a colonel, I've had an opportunity to lead thousands of people over that 30-year career. And I'll make an argument that sometimes we focus too much on the diversity and not enough on the inclusion. Because I can walk into a space and see women, men, black, white, Indian, and say, man, this is very diverse. But then I see silos of people, segregated because they don't feel included. And that's where leadership comes in. That being said, I'm also a resilience leader building instructor, a trainer, with the focus on teaching how to create those inclusive teams so we're stronger together. I mean, so coming into SDIG, what really brought me in is somebody introduced me to Dr. Warrier, and it was a whole different track, and we just sort of hit it off. And we've been talking. So as I started talking to individuals within the SDIG, one of the comments I made then, and I'm sticking to it now until someone changes my position, was there are a lot of people in the world, and I'm talking the LinkedIn world, so just the world in general, who talk about being D&I professionals. And it may be true, right? But how do I, as the outsider coming in, know who's who? If I want to find a PMP specialist, somebody has gone through PMP and got a certification. If I want to find somebody who's a human resource specialist, there's a certification there. I know. If I want to find somebody in the D&I space, who is that person? If I say, "Oh, you a D&I expert?" everybody raises their hand. I'm like, well, what makes you any more of an expert than me? Because I have a diverse experience dealing with people from all backgrounds and cultures in my own mind, right? So what I love about the group is there seems to be a focused effort now to get to that clearinghouse point where when folks look toward SDIG, they can say, I can trust what I'm seeing from the experts who put together this great forum for us to collaborate. So that's who I am.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Joseph, can I ask a question? Can I go dive right in?
Sure, of course, go.
Okay, great. So Kenita and Reginald and of course Martin and David and Mr. Khalif and Bailey, my daughter has joined. She was voluntold to join, and I talked about her in the last one. She was voluntold, yes. Thanks, Bailey. You know, Reggie, you've shared some really great points. My daughter is actually a senior at Texas Southern University, which is an historically Black college and university, and that experience has been incredible for her. I won't speak to it. Maybe later she'll share with us some of her thoughts. But, you know, one of the challenges sometimes with fear of the unknown, and obviously in the pandemic that we're in, is to, as much as we're connected sort of globally online, we also self-isolate. And you talked about those silos, Reggie. Kind of going forward, Kenita and Reggie and Martin and David and everyone, how do you see, particularly in the era of physical distancing or social distancing, how can we still continue to bridge those barriers and expose ourselves to places? You know, a lot of times it's travel, right? I've heard from a lot of colleagues who were in the military that travel really opened their minds. You know, my daughter was able to go and play soccer in Norway, Denmark, you know, different places all over the world. So, and I know actually most of us on this call have traveled pretty extensively. That may change. You know, travel is going to be very, very different going forward, and our ability to engage. Will we continue to leverage technology? Sort of what do you see going forward, and what should we be looking out for?
I'll jump in on that question. A lot of my work was based in the federal government, and one thing became rather evident over time. Without going into the whole background, a piece of my work was in the arena of gender. We were a very imbalanced organization in terms of ratio, and leading a team on that subject to try to figure out causes and solutions. It became evident to me that it was more an inclusion problem than it was a ratio problem. The numbers are not as relevant as the participation and influence rates of gendered individuals in our organization. And that became the premise of my book. But to this question, I think it also applies here in that in this environment, especially when we're doing remote sessions and these type of things, it's even more important to be inclusive. And by that, I mean, when we have Zoom meetings or when we have Zoom presentations or webinars or any of these type of things, that too has to be done on an equitable basis so that minority groups have as much voice and as much visibility within that space as do any other group. And so it really becomes a matter of really being conscious of that inclusiveness in my mind, making sure that there's equal opportunity for that visibility and for opportunities to participate and influence equitably.
If I could add to that, to just stretch a little bit and kind of bring a little bit different perspective as well. When we use words like assimilation, representation, and inclusion, I get a different picture when we're actually going to be transitioning out of this stay-at-home adventure and then back into the workforce. So the way I'm kind of looking at it, saying, okay, people are going to want to get back into the workplace, and most people are going to assimilate back into doing things the way they've always done it, if you can start to follow the parallel here. And then folks will be in their offices and back into those relationships, representing their role in that space. But if it's true inclusion, we're going to stop, we're going to take time, we're going to appreciate where the folks are coming from, what their stories were at home, that their spouses were sick and maybe died, or a loved one died, and they're bringing a different narrative into the office now. And I think inclusion from this standpoint, as the pandemic is concerned, we're all going to have a different narrative after this is done, and we're not going to all understand each other's narrative. But are we willing to open ourselves up to just not say, oh, good, my whole workforce is back, but we're going to stop and be inclusive and say, tell me what your story was, tell me what happened, let's figure out how we can help this transition be smoother. And so just really from an ethnic standpoint, when we're talking cultural diversity, are we being mindful of the different narratives that play out in stories? I remember sharing that at one of our other panels, and and then Jennifer also mentioned that this morning about having different narratives, and I think Reggie did as well. But just thinking about, we're all going to have different narratives, we're all going to be impacted differently, and so we might not be bringing the same role that we had before the pandemic, or the same approach. It might be stronger, it might be weaker, it might be who knows what. And so just being really mindful of what's people's stories, how can we expand the narrative, how can we be, set the table in such a way that folks feel like they're being welcomed into the space where they felt like they fit and belonged before.
So I think it's going to be difficult. It's already difficult before the pandemic, right? So I think it's going to be difficult coming out of it. I think the key is always going to be leadership. Who is leading the effort to bring people together and make them inclusive? You become inclusive by building social trust. You build social trust by interacting together. We tend to go into our own groups of comfort, to our comfort zones, into our space. We just naturally go there. So it takes either a very special person to step outside the comfort zone, or it takes leadership to pull you out of the comfort zone and create a new comfort zone. So I think it's going to be a challenge. So to answer your question, I don't know. I know that I, just based on my own experiences, don't expect people are going to get there by themselves. It's going to take somebody showing them what it looks like, what right looks like. And I think that's what SDIG has the potential to do. Once there is a consistent, agreed upon narrative, then this group can lead the way.
And I just wanted to say real quickly, 3 words, really consistent themes that keep permeating in everything that we're all talking about: fear, unknown or ambiguity, and change. If we can flip the narrative on all of those things to say, it's okay to be scared, it's okay to be anxious, it's okay to not know, Reggie, like you were saying, I don't know. But as long as we come from a place of love and a place of curiosity and shared experience and openness to that, I think only good things will happen, as long as we give ourselves that grace and that space to say, I'm scared, or I don't know, and please help me, or ask questions. I think that's really imperative for all of us going forward.
Yeah, last session you talked a lot about vulnerability, and I'm a huge believer that has to happen. One of the organizations I worked with, and I had shared this story before on another call, so maybe I'm being repetitive here, but a large federal organization, a scientific organization with many, many scientists, very very data focused, data driven, not so much emotionally driven. But the biggest breakthrough came when the director of the organization opened up about her sexual orientation in a nationwide call and released a nationwide video. And that took a lot of guts. And a lot of people questioned it and didn't understand why she was doing it, where she was. But at the end of the day, she sparked conversation, if nothing else, whereas before it was not talked about. And so, as you were saying, as Kenita was saying, when we get back to our offices after this pandemic is over, yeah, let's not discount the stories behind the work because I really believe that those type of stories, and when we open ourselves to give of ourselves in those type of stories, it's very, very powerful.
Right, but somebody has to build the team, right? So if I come in with my story and you all come in with your story, well, we just have stories. Who is the person bringing the team together to discuss some of the adversity you went through while you were away, some of the challenges, to have that conversation? And in having that conversation, people start saying, well, you're just like me. You were going through the same type of issues that I was going through. Because in my opinion, in my mind, and I have a shop right now, if I just allow everybody to come back into the job, they'll come back in and they'll start doing their job. But they're not going to start having a conversation if I don't initiate and make it okay and comfortable for them to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. And that probably starts with me sharing my story first, being vulnerable first. So it's okay for them to be vulnerable also.
Yeah.
It comes back to leadership, I think, is the key.
I think I would agree with that too. And I think I agree. I also agree with David, just that sense of vulnerability has to be led, right? There needs to be that leader piece. But then I think there's also that safety, it's a trust-based safety. And if that leader wasn't trusted before, they're not going to be trusted now, which means there's not going to be vulnerability. And so then, okay, we have to go back to square one maybe, or square two with certain people or certain groups, right? And I think, so it's that trust-based vulnerability. I can't remember who put the video out on that one. I think it was Simon Sinek, but don't quote me on that. But he talked very heavily on trust-based vulnerability. And when there is that trust that people have with each other, that as the leader would set the table in that way, then the rest of the team follow.
But who's going to teach the leader, right? Everybody isn't into this inclusion conversation like we are.
Right.
So a lot of folks who are in leadership positions really have no clue of the impact they have on the group. That's what I think SDIG is going to be positioned to do. Start teaching leaders how to lead.
Yes.
So they can create these comfort zones and make people want to share their stories. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah.
And I hope that SDIG would serve as an example of the power of safe space, the power of being able to openly articulate these type of things.
Mm-hmm.
Can I inject here? Is Martin here? Martin?
Yes, I'm here. I just placed myself on
Martin,
mute.
please help us in this discussion a little bit. Then I have a couple of things to inject, please.
Right. So I completely disagree with the term place of safety.
Okay.
For me, it lacks empowerment. It invokes victimhood. It evokes everything that when you leave, you go back to face the world. My LinkedIn content, I have two key words: courage and inclusion. I have courage tattooed on my back. Last year, the Mardi Gras theme was fearless. And that came at a point in time where I needed it the most. In 1978, Sydney held its first Mardi Gras, which is Pride. One of my favorite placards is a lady who held up the Lesos. It's so funny because I imagine there's this whole love and spirit for the gay community that where female homosexuality was not a crime, but it was for gay men, you had our lesbian sisters fighting for equality. And I had the incredible privilege of saying thank you to the lady who, for 50 years, has been advancing for the rights of others, including herself. And for me, she's been a power of just a tower of strength. She's been marching in the Mardi Gras for 42 years. So we've got to change the language a little bit to around you're here, try and take who you are outside to the world, and it's going to have a cascading effect. The more we talk about place of strength, place of safety, not a place of strength, you're still going to be, as soon as you leave that environment, you're facing the cruel world. It is a cruel world, but if you search for great people, you're going to find that. You're going to find your tribe. So I think we need to change the narrative slightly to empowering people. People talk about NLP on those anchors. I use something called the Courage Bank, which is memories where I feel strong to get me through the difficult moments.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing, Martin.
You're welcome.
I love that because it's very asset-based, Martin, and it focuses on the strengths that you've had. So it challenges you to remind and reconnect with that survivor and triumph and victory and like you're saying, place of strength. And Joseph, I don't know if you have a question right now, but the other thing I definitely want to talk about, I heard Reggie talk about this and Kanita and Martin, you're really talking about resilience, which is a really important word. And I want to see your vision for what the resilience of, you know, they've talked about like our society in general having PTSD, right, from what we've been through. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that collective spirit of resilience and what does that look like in our everyday lives going forward.
Can I just say, I really appreciate your perspective, Martin. And I think it's so important that we do respond or come at it from a courage and strength space. But I think we can both agree that everybody's on a spectrum, right? And some people are at the fear point. And I've noticed that with my transformational coaching work that I've done with a lot of clients, that many of them are trapped in the fear, but then maybe you can help them kind of launch out of that. Then they can embrace that language of courage and fear, right? Yeah. So I think I love how you've packaged that. And I think that's so crucial. So, yeah. And I don't remember your question, Jennifer, sorry.
Sure. Bailey, can you mute yourself?
Yes, Mom.
I don't know. Hopefully she can hear us. All right. So, Kanita, it was about resilience. How will we define resilience going forward? How will we inspire that? What does resilience look like post COVID-19? You know, what does that future of resilience look like? And maybe it's very, you know, there's not a definition. I mean, I think that's something that's being challenged right now is our definitions and labels. But I know resilience is important to all of us. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah, if I could just finish up what I was saying. So I think resilience is key, and I think all of us will have it. But the question is, are we going to tap into it? And are we going to find it? Is that where we're living from? Interesting that today is the 5-year anniversary of the Nepal earthquake, and I was in it. And so this whole experience right now with the pandemic has really uncovered a lot of just memories and different things. I'm in a way better place today with the PTSD than I was 4 years ago. And it happened 5 years ago. That first year afterwards, I don't really remember. And so really working through that stuff and discovering how resilient I am as a result of all of that. This pandemic is showing me that. So for me, this has become a bit of a positive experience, but I know that's not the case for everybody. So my encouragement would be to folks to discover their resiliency is tap into an experience that you've had before that's made you feel trapped, made you feel stuck, made you experience a list of losses. And how did you respond then? And if you're not responding in the way that you had hoped, get help, find support, walk with someone, you know, get that encouragement to discover that resiliency deep down inside.
I've been in 2 induced comas. I've been hospitalized about 70 times in the last 14 years. I've been ventilated and it's not a pleasant experience. The dreams you have are probably the worst things around the PTSD. For me, it was more around the dreams. But that has prepared me for so many things in life. I mean, 2 times I had a sudden crisis, straight into resuscitation. It was so bad. And the sexual assault, everything, my experiences have actually got me to where I recognize it. The thing with PTSD, you can have a looping effect where you survive through panic, where you actually link a memory to a different memory. So I use grounding. I've got a bracelet. I wear a Qantas baseball cap. So there are a couple of things you can do, some practices you can actually take forward.
Sure.
For me, the experience does not define who I am. I go back to the courage bank, actually make it part of me. Otherwise, somebody else controls the narrative. And the media at the moment is, I mean, this whole thing about disinfectant is ludicrous. It's funny. All you can do is laugh at it. But it's crazy. It's silly. We've got to filter what information we take and focus on something positive to move forward.
Yeah, as you talk about resilience, as I said earlier, I am a resilience leadership trainer. So resilience, as we define it, and I think Martin hit on it in a perfect sense. At the individual level, it's just the ability to take what life has shown you, has brought to you, and grow from it, get stronger, adapt, and move forward. That's being resilient. So you bounce back. In a team setting, it's the ability of the team to accomplish difficult and challenging tasks together. They learn to depend upon each other and move forward stronger together, always stronger together. So a challenge becomes to ensure you are enabling an environment where there's mutual respect and trust. It doesn't always exist. So like Martin talked about being gay. Now, remember I told you I had to get out of my own way? 20 years ago, I'd have had a whole different thought of Martin. Today, Martin, I love you. I don't know you, but today you're just human to me, right? I had to get out of my own way. And I used you as an example, but I could put that on other categories of people also because I was in my own way. It took somebody to teach me I was in my own way, and now I try to teach other people to get out of their own way.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been lucky not to experience too much homophobia, and I'm the type of person where I will challenge it straight away. So I'll make you are more uncomfortable than you are trying to make me uncomfortable. The most difficult experience was leaving Robben Island 6 years ago. I was going up to West Africa to stay with my husband for a few weeks. He'd gone back home. So I had to go back into the closet. And I was speaking to a lady, a Nigerian lady who was living in America. And I was just having a chat to her. We'd literally just left Nelson Mandela's cell and like freedom for everybody. But she said, you'll be fine. By the way, you're not accepted in my culture. So 1 minute she's like freedom for other people. But straight away, she's using her prejudice to then say, you're not welcome. You'll be fine, but you're not welcome in my culture. So you always have to challenge the prejudice of others because you may advance your rights, but you can't infringe on the rights of others at the same time. And that's the real problem with homophobia and transphobia. It's so ingrained in a belief system. And people like yourself who have the courage to say, you know what, I've changed. You know, I really want to embrace you and say, thank you so much. You know, you're the true ally.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And I thank you, Martin, for your honesty. And I can relate to what Reggie's saying about, 20 years ago, I think I would have been in the same spot. Like this would have been really hard for me to hear and hard for me to capture and meet and greet you. And I don't know you yet enough, but I'd love to, engage conversation with you at some point. But I think what I've learned over the years is how to take a step back in any relationship, right? This is what I incorporate with the inclusion work. Take a step back, allow grace in the space, and let me consider for one moment you as a human, and I'm a human. What might your narrative be? What might your story be? What is going through your life? And how then can I encourage and love and support? And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that we're condoning one another's lifestyles, but it's just, I'm supporting you because you matter, right? In any shape or form. And I don't know, no offense, but I don't know that I would have said that 20 years ago, let alone 10, 15 years ago, right? So that deep work has been done in me too, to say, take a step back, put grace in the space and just kind of maybe try to say, okay, what might this person's story be? And how can I then, and if I have to learn more, if I have to do whatever, change my train of thought, but I don't want to tolerate, I want to accept.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest switch that needs to happen in our society today. We need to tolerate less and we need to accept more.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I say it over and over. This is my recurring theme. People aren't going to get there unless they are led there.
Mm.
We've got to set the example.
I agree with you, Reggie. I do think there's an element of self-leadership, though, because until we're willing and open to learning, right, we are not going to be able to move forward. And so I think at the heart of everything, your reticence towards someone who lives a different lifestyle or who has a different sexual identity or fluidity or approach to life is because of not knowing. Right. And because it wasn't yours, right? So the only way to understand and not be fearful is to learn and to share and to be vulnerable and to come from a place of love, grace, and acceptance. Mm-hmm. You know, across the board to everybody on the whole process of all of us are humans. Mm-hmm. And we're absolutely unique. And in that individuality is what makes us beautiful, you know, but it comes back to courageous leadership. So I think really, Reggie and Martin, it's like that combination of you have to be courageous enough to stand up and then you have to lead. And that leadership can be self-leadership and saying, you know what, Reggie and Martin are showing me or teaching me because I'm willing to learn and to listen outside of my own comfort zone. And that's the other thing. We have to not be afraid to be uncomfortable mm-hmm, or to be ambiguous, or that lines can be blurred and that there's not always a right or wrong or a left or right. Yeah. It's simply, you know, there's a lot of ambiguity. And that's something that COVID-19 has really challenged for all of us, that constant ambiguity that we're all sharing together, which I think has been a good thing, even though it's uncomfortable and it's scary. If we can get over the fear and establish ourselves as self-leaders, I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. I think, yes, I agree with that, Jen. Thank you. Self-leadership is key. And I also want to give a fair shout out to all the mentors in my life that have really walked with me and led me out of some of those holes that I was in, right? And now I'm finding myself leading with this particular kind of what I was talking to you about, Martin, just a minute ago, right? I'm leading in conversations that I'm having and they're looking at me like, wow, how did you change your perspective on things? I said, listen, I'm growing and I'm growing forward. If you want to come with me, let's do this. But if you want to stay back there, it's going to get boring, you know? And so just, you're right. The self-leadership is key, but then paying attention to where and how are we leading and who are we impacting as we go forward?
Yeah, and also another,
sorry.
I was going to throw another level of leadership in there. We've talked about self-leadership and we've talked about leaders taking on the responsibility of leadership. In between there is grassroots or mid-level, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of times individuals may not be able to lead on their own, but if we partner together, find groups and create a consolidated voice, sometimes groups can exhibit a great deal of leadership in that way.
You know, if I may add, I think you guys are making great points. The thing I want to add is this. In midst of people who are like in solo, and being in solo doesn't mean that it's bad, but it's just that that's how they had been acculturated to behave. And that's very common in this society. So that's the reality. So what I would also add is sometimes be as crazy as I am, each time I get in an environment, guess what I look for? Someone who is not spoken to. Someone who is like outside, and you will know internally that person believes he doesn't or she doesn't belong. And it wouldn't be surprising to see somebody making disparaging remarks in order to strengthen that type of belief. So while I've argued this many times, if you don't have leadership, don't even talk to me about diversity. The leadership supposed to be able to provide all the things, all the resources, whether it's mental or, you know, discussion or communication or just digressing and talking to people who otherwise will feel that they're not part of it. Through that process, you see that, you know, you see the joy in human beings, regardless of whom the person is. Somebody that people may say, oh, this person is horrible, but we all want to belong. And when we find ourselves in an environment where people show us the sense that we don't belong, we may not say anything, but we internalize it. And by so doing, it impacts how we behave. So on individual level, I ask that you think about it wherever you go. Look at those people who are, nobody talks to. Talk to the person. And the leadership part, sometimes we don't have the authority or the power to do that. And then I'll go to the next way I deal with it. Everyone should always be asking him or herself, there are two options. There are things I can control, there are things I cannot control. Effectively, grab that which you can control and use it to advance engagement, connection, creating a sense of belonging for all. For those things you cannot control, just find ways to influence it so that the outcome, hopefully, will come into what you have conceptualized that is going to be.
Yeah, and Joseph, I'd also say we talk about belongingness sometimes on a personal level, and obviously it's very personal to a lot of people. It affects the way they work. We have to also talk about it as an organizational problem, because people that aren't belonged, or as Saba said in the last session, the outsiders, and you use the same terminology yourself, they're disempowered. And that disempowerment not only affects them and their well-being, but it also affects the well-being of whatever groups they're working with. When you disempower one individual through isolating them, you disempower the whole organization. I think that's one of the ways we need to approach it, instead of just, well, let's just make this person feel better by making them feel more belong. Yes, we want that to happen, but understand that it goes deeper than that. It goes to the way people operate and behave and participate and encourage each other, type of things as well. There's much more to it than just feeling a sense of belonging. There's all these other aspects that emanate from that.
Australia's had a difficult 6 months. We had the bushfires, which were really October through to March. And like this, Sydney was just covered in smoke for months. Our Prime Minister went on holiday to Hawaii over Christmas with the crisis point. And the focal point was on our Prime Minister is on holiday whilst the nation is suffering its worst crisis. Then COVID-19 has happened. He's starting to become a bit of a leader, and we really needed it. We had a revolving door of prime ministers. I think we had about 7 prime ministers in 10 years. Luckily, we seem to have escaped the worst of the crisis. We've had about 75 deaths, less than 7,000 cases, and we're talking about opening up the border with New Zealand again. Today, or your day in the US, is Anzac Day, and it's a day of remembering the Anzacs from the Gallipoli. And Turkey always hosts the dawn service. So Turkey, which was part of the Ottoman Empire, has had comradeship with Australia and New Zealand. And today we just kind of celebrate everything coming together. So why do we remember one day but not the other 364 days? So hopefully we're going to start to see more of that community change in Australia, which really needs it. We've been so tribal in politics for the last 10 years, but it's about people coming together to support each other. Why does it take a crisis to do that? I don't know, but hopefully we can start moving a bit forward, because I think there's a real change. People don't want the animosity that we've had for the last 10 years in this country.
I agree. I think, you're saying, why does it take a crisis to bring people together? That's such a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, really? Because if we're together and things are good, then why aren't we learning and growing forward together? But then it's that crisis that either forces us together or separates us, right? And I think this crisis of not feeling included and not including people runs a lot deeper. And then that fit and belong piece is so painful and personal, right? It's belonging somewhere is a real personal issue. And yet I know I can relate to it, but I think that's part of the passion of being somebody that's passionate about inclusion, is helping people fit and belong, because it comes from a deep space in my story where I didn't experience that or don't feel that in some spaces that I should. And so just pushing for that inclusion and changing the storyline and, you know, the work around that.
All right. Okay, now let me ask. I hear equity, I hear being courageous, I hear being like you know, whatever it is. And I also hear about emotions. And there are so many emotions, and each and every one of us may be at a certain point in the continuum of all these varied emotions. And whichever point we find ourselves will probably be something we could decipher. If we can correctly decipher that point and know the variables playing there, perhaps we can begin to understand why different people behave differently. Somebody may feel like, well, I've had enough of this, so you know what? I'm just gonna use courageous means, whatever it means, to ensure that I bulldoze whatever thing that will come to hurt me. And somebody else who may have experience where calmness may have helped would come with that type of idea. So by and large, I'm just suggesting that sometimes there is no perfect way, but perhaps employing eclectic modalities could help us to ultimately find the best way to deal with our situations, regardless of where we are. But the bottom line is that engagement is critical, even whichever position you take. Try to solicit the ideas from other people whose tactical approach may not even be in sync with yours. By engaging with them, you increase the rapport of your, ways you could deal with similar situation, and by and large, you come with much better. I wouldn't say better, but one of the best ways to deal with situations.
You know, Joseph, on that point, and Reggie posted a question in the chat also, how do you go from talk to action? I think one of the better ways I've seen that done is working with some of the UN organizations around the concept of mainstreaming, whether you mainstream, in my case, I worked on mainstreaming gender, or whether you mainstream race or mainstream disabilities, or whatever. The idea being that you make that a part of structured conversations, not just idle hallway conversations. In other words, when you have a meeting, at the end of this meeting, you say, okay, now what effect does this have on this group? Or what effect does what we decide this meeting have on this group? And then we always ask the question that brings that to the forefront of effect. And only by asking about the effect do we really see what actions can occur from that effect. And so, so I've always been a big proponent of that, and we don't really do that in the US as much as they do in Europe or in the UN organizations and things like that. But imagine if you had, let's just take disabilities, for example. Imagine if every meeting within an organization, at the end of the meeting, someone said, okay, now what is the effect of what we decide in this meeting today on our disabled employees, for example? Or based on what we decide today, what is the effect on our female customers or our female employees? Or based on what occurred in this meeting today, what is the effect on this other group? And so we always follow up the conversation, noting the effects, and typically what I have seen is those effects, once we understand the effects, then we start seeing what actions or behaviors can modify those effects. I think that's one path to get there.
I was thinking that talk to action is going to look a little different in every arena, right? Is that fair to say? And I know you're not necessarily looking for a particular answer, but I love that this is generating some good conversation. The word that came to mind was accountability, right? When we want to talk about something, are we just going to talk about it, or are we going to put our feet to it? So that comes with, as a leader, are we willing to walk the talk, or are we just going to talk the talk? And the folks that just talk the talk, they disappear to the back row and then they're quiet and they fall asleep. But those of us that are actually walking the talk, and if we're doing it collectively, like with this group, we're pulling together, we're sharing resources, we're sharing strengths and different opportunities, that's action right there in form of discussion, but it's an opportunity to hopefully grow into something more, right? So this is action. We're saying we're passionate about it, even though we're talking about it, we're putting feet to it by doing the things that we do in our own groups, coming together. But then even, our group does, my organization does, we do workshops, that's action. And what I find in those workshops, people are realizing that they have a role to play. And once they get the information, they can either take the step forward and live into that, the talk that they've been doing this whole time, or they don't, but now they're held accountable because they have the information, they have the practical tools, and if they choose not to use them, now it's on them.
You know,
So I wanted, I'm sorry.
go ahead, Jennifer.
I just wanted to interject very quickly that the workshops, the trainings, the events are all wonderful. However, we have to caution ourselves from patting ourselves on the back too hard because we held a wonderful inclusion event or we have a certification that's hanging on the back of the wall. If it is not integrated into daily practice, if we say, oh, I'm a great college president because I've created a very diverse group of people to handle diversity, and they tell me all about it and they send me reports, we are failing ourselves, we're failing our institutions, and that's not real transformational leadership, nor is it servant leadership.
Yeah,
so Reggie, the accountability that Kenita is talking about is not just, did you meet all the competencies of this training on a one day? No,
Right.
Are you living it? Are you challenging unfair or inequitable processes? Are you saying, we've got 2 students who attend this private liberal arts college, one who's here on a full scholarship and doesn't have computer or internet access when she goes home, and one who lives and has all of the accoutrements. Doesn't mean that the one who has the privilege is not, it doesn't negate that she may be disrupted by COVID-19. It means that the young lady who doesn't have access to all of those support systems needs additional support as well and/or advocacy. So again, we have to be thinking through that lens that David was talking about, that's cumulative, comprehensive, and inclusive, so that we're not just making decisions on behalf of, but in partnership with all of the people who need to be at the table, and not just saying we're at the table for them. We need to invite them to the table and then shut up and listen.
I really like the responses you are coming up with. And Reggie, I want to thank you for that very question, and because that question is very fundamental. And I must also say that Reggie has not only come in and do things, he has done some things that are sort of extra. And that's some sort of a way to, to help advance that particular thing. It's not just one thing, as Jennifer had indicated. It's going to be a combination of things. It could be like just by coming together and talking with what do we do, how do we do it. At this particular point, we are at the stage of really looking at the structure. How do we go about this? And for us, some people are believing that the way to go is to consistently engage.
3 words: your network, your influence, your leverage. We've all got a phone. I'm part of this conversation because a year ago, I went on LinkedIn, created a profile. I call myself a LinkedIn diva. I post daily videos. I'm part of this conversation. My videos, I did 1,000 push-ups earlier today. As a lady, I was challenged to do something. I talked about courage and inclusion as a lady was doing downward dog, yoga, boxing, but we had a conversation. And that's what really starts it. I'm part of this conversation because I connected with Joseph and we become friends. I'm using my network to share my message. I'm using my influence to share my message. I'm using my leverage. Now, I sent Joseph a comms plan about having a wider LinkedIn group, doing a session on storytelling, using a messenger app called Telegram, which is, I'm part of 2 pods to make sure my stuff trends. So that collectively as a group, you can share your message, but we can do more collaboration and that will have a cascading effect. But probably those 3 things I think as an individual you can do more. The structure, David, is right. It needs to be there and I can see the progress. But I think using those three things, your network, your influence, your leverage, are the most powerful actions you can take as an individual, in my view.
That's good.
So
Thank
may
you.
I just share what Dr. Warrior can't stand it when I say I'm not a D&I professional.
Yeah.
But I'm intrigued by
Yeah.
just people in general. So when I take a look at SDIG, and I'm going to talk long term. I mean, what I see as action. We all watch the news in some form of fashion, be it internet or actually looking on the TV. For people who still look at TV, that kind of thing. Inequities happen all over, whether it's in Michigan or whether it's in Australia, wherever it may be, right? And so if we see that inequity, and then we as a group talk about it, and then we approach the mayor, city council, whoever, say, look, this is who we are. We see you having an issue here. Let us help you change the narrative by giving you some techniques that will create a lasting change, not just check a block. How can we do that? Because we are the professionals. This is what we do. That's what I see as taking action, but that's more of a long-term vision. It starts with us having a conversation, coming up with some common understanding of what the issue is, then putting together a plan to help out whoever it is you're going to help out. That's the military mind, though, right? That's that we need to attack. Let's come up with a plan to attack.
Let me tell you, this is why I'm fascinated with it, because finally it seems like I have people who think along the line I think about things. I've had a college president who consistently brought African Americans from urban school in Pennsylvania, from Philadelphia to be precise, Pittsburgh, and then bring them up in summer. At the end of the summer, all these people are flunked out. And the person I owe my belief, besides my dad, which is number one, that person is by name Larry Wood. I remember very vividly when he went to the president and said, what the heck is going on here? I can bet you that nobody in the whole institution could ever say that. And that's courage. After that incident, things began to change. And as they change, some people want us to take 2 steps forward, 1 step forward and 2 steps forward. So to Reggie's point, I completely concur with his assertion of finding ways to take action. Yes. If you remember, during one of those meetings, I said that we're going to be taking positions on issues. We're going to be having press releases on these issues. But before we get there, we have to really form the base. I haven't unveiled my thinking completely. My thinking would include having some robust people who could be in position to communicate with those who may otherwise not hear us. But when they're communicated through our what I'm considering that is going to be the type of people who hear them, through that process, we're going to be making changes. So, Reggie, stay tuned.
Remember, reputational risk is the biggest risk in any corporation, business, or enterprise. And that is the biggest leverage you have. If a company's doing something wrong and you can challenge it and you have a big network, no company wants to be seen to be doing the wrong thing. So the fear of being exposed is a great advantage we have in this space.
Completely.
Martin, what were the 3 things? You said influence, leverage,
Influence, network, and leverage.
Network. Okay, great, great. Joseph, did we want to ask Christy or Mr. Khalifa if they had any questions or feedback on our very robust and dynamic discussion? I know Christy is joining us from Texas, and Khalif is joining us from Florida, but he's on a bike ride, so he may not be able to. Hey, Christy.
Hello.
Hello.
No
Welcome.
questions yet, but I'm enjoying what I'm hearing so far.
Oh, great.
Good.
And do we want to talk a little bit about how they can become involved and become part of the solution with us?
Well, if they could send email, I will send them the link, because the link, I'm still trying to figure how I'm gonna make it open. I have so many people, but they can't get in. So it's kind of, I have to send them the link to get in. Or I can give you the link, you can then forward them to anyone you want, Jennifer. Then through that link, anyone can enter and then becomes a part of us.
Yeah.
But you're not talking about a part of today's conversation. You're talking about a part of SDIG, or did
SDIG, that's correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we could all, those of us that have been involved in SDIG, share a little bit with Christy and Khalif about what it means to us, kind of what the next steps are, where we see ourselves kind of going forward.
Okay. Well, I can take a stab at that, and the other people who are, really pushing the envelope to establish ourselves will also weigh in. Well, SDIG, Systemic Diversity and Inclusion Group, is a group I formed based on my experiences. I've been in an environment where I've seen people wrongly humiliated, and when they try to say, why did you do this, they got gotten rid of. And oftentimes, as Martin was saying, nobody has the courage to stand and say, people go like sheep. They just go the direction everybody else is going. And it's unfortunate, but that's very common. So diversity, this very group was formed. It's kind of a replication of what I had done before, where I had people from different countries, white people, Black people, Hispanic people, Asian people. We came together and formed a small unit. And within this unit, the first thing we have is to be frank with one another. If there's something that bothers you, you express it. But express it in a way that you don't really create even more scenery. Do it in a way that we could all see different views, why you see it that way, and see why other people see it, however way they see it. And with that, we started caring for one another. If something happens to somebody within that group that I had, it's like it's happening to all of us. These are really, truly committed people. And that helped me to open what they call urban program. This urban program took all white people in suburban area and put them in urban environment where, when they got there, they engaged with people in that urban environment. And keep in mind, these are people whom they wouldn't speak to at all. These are people whom in their homes, like what I call artificial walls, they don't see them, but all they say about them are disparaging, no good thing whatsoever. So when they came to that environment, the first 2 days, why are these people doing this? Why are these people doing that? After these 2 days, they got to know them. It began, that's my child. That's my child. Those kids that didn't trust them began to trust them. The relationship that blossomed through those processes is just unimaginable. Some of the journals, I think I can give you some of the journals, it's really documented and written. Some students will say, you know what? I learned more in 2 weeks than I did in 4 years of my education. True story, figure out. And that propelled me to write a course they call Introduction to Multicultural Education. And that course was really where I began to really develop and believe that human beings are by nature good. If you don't know somebody, you assume that they're bad, and then when you hear bad things about them, it adds to what you already know, and then when you see those people, you treat them the way you treat them. So that's the way. So this organization is to bring all of us together with fundamental principle, respecting one another, growing together, and helping to change the world. The type of thing that we are seeing, like I was citing in the other session, in 10 Downing in Britain, there's a place, I've forgotten the name, where they said that the people who are dying, the people who are suffering from this COVID-19 are the poor, uneducated, the people who serve those who are privileged. They expose themselves for the interest of those who are there. So the question I keep asking, could you imagine that they all helped one another, that those people were well educated, they could stay at their home, they could do other jobs other than just clustering a set of people into where they will die? So the question then becomes, how do we ensure that this inequity, which is the foundation of all these things, we talk about it year in and year out, nothing is really done, because the victims are usually seen everywhere. It doesn't even matter your education. You might have PhD and go to certain places, the way they treat you is like you don't even have high school. If you don't have high school, you can see it in unemployment rate. Go and look, Black unemployment, Hispanic unemployment, white unemployment, Asian unemployment. Look at mortgage, who gets mortgage loan. Look at businesses, which businesses gets this. So the idea is to expose these things and prevent the structural inequity that actually provide the foundation for all these problems from ever taking shape again. So we all gonna work together, and that's the only way we can tell the world that this has to stop.
Yeah, one of the things I feel about this group is eventually we're going to have a very collective voice, and that's one of the things we're going to get to. Another aspect, I talked to Dr. Nawali about this early on in one of our very first conversations about the aspect of leveraging diversity within this group, because the way this is structured, we can reach people from all over the world, and we can bring people in from any background. If we're having a talk on race relations, for example, we can bring in a diverse group to talk about that, whether they're experts or just people that have had experience with that, and bring them into the fold. I used to tell a story when I used to do leadership workshops about listening to other voices, and I used to use the example that back in the days of castles and kings and queens, sometimes it wasn't the advisors who had sway over a king or a queen. Sometimes it was the court gesture, right? And in an office environment, I used to equate it to, sometimes who we want to listen to is not necessarily the people we're usually meeting with. It may be you want to talk to the admin assistant. They see everything that goes on. They have a different perspective. And so to me, it's all about leveraging the power of different perspectives and different experiences. And that to me is one of the most powerful things about this platform. Is not just that we talk, but the talk brings new ways of thinking based on differing perspectives from different individuals. And that's why this can be very powerful in my mind. Just the leveraging of diversity itself within the group.
Yeah, I think it's going to be powerful also. I think my only caution is we need to be careful we don't become so enamored by how good it sounds talking about it that we don't actually do something. Like it's the elephant. You can't eat the whole elephant. So at some point you got to decide what part you're going to bite. And once you get that digested, you step out again, right? And I pick on you guys because what I find for this group is most of the folks who are in it are in academia, right? So it's the professor who sits in the classroom. I'm not that guy. I'm tired of all the lecture. Let's get to action. Let's start working, right? And so just be careful that everybody doesn't become impressed with what everybody else is saying. And we say we need to take action, but we never actually step and take action. Even if that first step leads to failure, you're going to learn from it.
Yeah, I would agree with
Can
you.
I? Oh,
I'm sorry. Let me just say that one thing, in a collective voice, as we say down the road, I think is one of those actions that we can do, is just speak to a topic on a collective voice. And I think that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. I don't think we know yet how powerful we can be or what actions may emanate from the ideas we share. To me, one of the other thing is when we share best practices with each other, those best practices once shared can become practices within other places besides our own. And that's another aspect of the powerful actions that can emanate from these discussions.
Yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of, with this group, I haven't been part of the committee necessarily for long term, but I know Dr. Joseph and I have had a lot of great conversations offline in terms of how to shape the work that's being done and how to shape some of the structures on this committee. However, what I'm feeling like with this committee is that it's a great place for like a think tank of sorts, where we're coming around, we're sharing our own work that we're doing, we're empowering and encouraging each other, but the action actually happens in our own spaces and in our own work arenas where we're impacting and doing our work. And so we go back that much more sharpened. I would say that would be one of the way the actions show up. But I think you're right. I think the board space needs to be open to kind of do some more brainstorming around what would the action actually look like from this group in a different way.
I'm going to add, I don't have an R&D background. I just have a passion. I want to make a difference. My background is in the corporate world, where I&D was very much an exclusive space. If you wanted to get involved, you had to be part of HR. So there's that lack of action is often within the corporate world as well. It's people coming together. Reginald, whether you and I have a conversation offline, I think we can do more on the comms and collaborating as a group in terms of our own content and messaging. I think the structure has to be there before you start communicating what it's about, because people want to know, okay, what's your social proof? But I think as a group, we can communicate and collaborate a little bit more in what we do, and that will actually start create a bit of a cascade.
Okay, we are getting close to the time we don't have much time, but I'm gonna say this. As far as the group is concerned, we are still undergoing some changes, and those changes will result in having this type of things that are going to be going on different dimensions simultaneously. And within that context, we will be having things like what Bridget was talking about, people who would say to these people, look, why is this going this way? This is something you can do. Right now, I have different research, different work where they're pinpointing how a first grader would have to deal with the pain and anguish with his or her first graders being dehumanized, being punished for something his or her classmates, I'm talking about first graders. Just think about it for a moment. And then when you go up, you see similar things. So these are the areas where we have some scholars, like, we have scholars who understand the dynamics of education, who understand the policies, who understand the in and out. Those are the people whom, as we move forward and we get information from such schools, we will be able to do what Reggie said. And if they don't do, we can move it forward, because as the structure I'm looking at now, we will have place where you can go and see articles, see research on these things. So when we say something, it's with authority. It's not that we're just saying something. It will be with authority. We'll be documenting it and following through. So those things are gonna come, but we are really right now, we are looking at the foundational part of it. And the foundational part of it will be grounded based on what drove me into this process, because that's what I want us to be able to do, because I've seen it, I've tested it, and I've not seen anyone that had happened that showed this. Now, I don't know if you noticed this. When you watch the people who are doing this, we are lacking Hispanic Americans, we are lacking Asian Americans, and I want everybody to be in, everybody. And when we begin to really look into it, then we begin to see, like now, you hear about what is happening to Chinese Americans. There are some nincompoops out there fighting them, doing all kinds of horrible things to people they don't know, people who are even more Americans than those who are hurting them are. But they couldn't see that because their pigmentation may be certain way. So they look at their pigmentation and say, well, we are the one, but the other people are not. Those are things I want us to be able to deal with, and in open space. If you look at our group, I'm trying so hard not to have, say, all Black people, all white people. I wanna see everybody. If you think of Frederick Douglass, when he was working for equity and justice for all, he worked with white people, especially women, Black people, in order to foster that peace. Now, I must say this, if you look at white women, they come together, they make meetings, they talk about women with each. If they are smart, they will include all race, sexual orientation, because all these issues are the same. It's just that they have some context to it. If you get the number together, we will make much more improvement than working alone. So we're gonna continue to work until we get the formula, get the foundation. And when we get the foundation, I think our voice will be heard. They will hear us.
Awesome. Well, before I say some closing remarks, I just wanted to see if Christy or Khalif wanted to say hello. Christy, just unmute your mic.
Hello, guys. I'm Christy. Thank you guys for allowing me to join your video chat. You know, it's definitely going off of Mr. Harrison and all you guys, what you're talking about, Mr. Stark. You know, my background for so many years has been obviously in sports. I was a teacher for several years. I played college basketball. I currently work at a housing authority in which I get a chance to see several different sides of a spectrum now. You know, and going back to what Mr. Harrison said about taking action on some things. Matter of fact, I was just talking to my boys. I started a YouTube video because one of my hearts obviously is coaching. What I don't like is how so many parents and kids are being taken advantage of by these huge sport organizations. I mean, they're just completely just taking a complete advantage as far as the recruiting process. You know, they're getting to a point, they're taking control of the high school programs. And it's a lack of knowledge, that's what's happening. And my big thing has been to add value to people. Honestly, I started this YouTube channel pretty much when the quarantine started. And it just hit me because one of the things is I've always wanted to reach as many kids as possible. Honestly, I kind of went back and forth with coaching. I would go into training, I would do my skills training, then I would see kids getting taken advantage of. So I would go back and coach high school just so I wouldn't have to see kids get taken advantage of. And one of the things I would always pray about is how do I get more kids involved? At one point I thought maybe I need to go back into college coaching, because I have all that background. I played Division I basketball. I played, coached Division II, junior college, high school, AAU, all of it, little kids, all of it. And so finally, I decided to start a YouTube channel, and a lot of it, I finally got a chance to put a video out. Actually, I just published it today. I wanted to wait until I was able to edit it better, but it's about taking action, you know, and a lot of it is just, hey, here's some simple things. I want to give parents their control back as far as recruiting process. Everybody, we all just want our kids, you know, to be their best or do what it is they want to do. We want to give them the opportunity to do it. I'm not saying everybody's going to get a college or athletic scholarship, but by all means, I feel like there should be more fairness in it. You know, and right now you have people and these organizations are saying, hey, you have to go through me in order to even talk, you know, to a college coach. It's almost like the whole, you know, I'm the middleman person, and, you know, and then they'll talk to parents so rude, like intimidation, all these different things. And so that's just been one of my ways in the sport world to take control. But at the same time, working for the public housing, there's so many young athletes whose parents can't afford it. You know, I have great relations with Nancy Lieberman, and she offered me 30 scholarships last year. So I was able to send so many kids to the camps. But there's so many athletic kids who cannot afford, some of them can't even get to the park or get to a basketball court. So that was one of the reasons why I started creating videos. So, I mean, this is the same information I give my parents who maybe have paid, who have, you know, and I actually work at the YMCA now to make it a lot easier for them. But at the same time, it's one of those things where I do have videos. I'll be happy to share them with you. If you guys know any kids, you know, this is just one of my ways that I'm wanting to try to add value. Because like I said, and it's so nice when I email my clients and they tell me that they've been working. Oh, we've been working with your videos. I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, sometimes they might not say anything right then. But I know that the information, if they can just practice, I didn't have any, well, my brother, but when he went off to college and stuff, you know, I would have to go to the rec or work on stuff by myself, you know, and I know at least if they can just have something that they can pull up and look at and maybe just kind of work on their skills, basic stuff, little things that they can do without having to be at a gym. I was talking to my boys, I said, you can tell a coach's skill. I can take a sock and teach you how to play basketball with it. You know, I don't need a whole bunch of big hoity-toity gimmicks to do that. And so just giving the kids hope at the public housing authorities. Hey, you can still do this. And guess what? If you put time, like today, the video is about how to get recruited. It's going to take work, but a lot of it is missing that connection. You know, so many times these kids, they're going, it's just a transactional deal now. It's a business transaction. That's why you see so many kids transferring from team to team to team to team, because they're not establishing connection. So one of the things I really talked about was how to develop a connection and how to communicate better. So anyways, that's just one of the things, you know, going off of what we're saying about making a difference. That's one of the things that I have, I'm excited about it. So it's one of my things that I'm trying to do to kind of help the community and kind of help, and like I said, spread it out. It can go, it's YouTube, so it can go all across the globe or whatever. But I just know there's so many kids who have heart, but they just might not have, they might not be the favorite, or whoever, or the parents aren't paying. And I don't want the rich parents to get taken advantage of. You know, it's about fairness, and it's about adding value to people and everything. And so that's one of my big things. So I love this group.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christy.
That's lovely.
Let me ask you, well, Christy, not you, but I really appreciate what you've said. And Jennifer, please, you know, you heard this courageous woman that wants to make a difference closer.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have somebody else with you, Jennifer?
Yeah, I don't know if Khalif is still riding his bike, but he was actually a high school teacher of the year, and also a Division I athlete, and as an artist, and does all kinds of great things. Khalif, can you speak? Can we hear you?
Yeah, I can speak. First, I just want to tell everybody, you know, I'm enjoying the conversations that's going on. I do apologize. I'm, you know, on a bike ride, trying to stay in shape while we're dealing with, you know, this stay at home, because you can easily, you know, let your health down by eating and sitting down and sleeping. And I got caught in that the first couple of weeks. So I decided to change it up and get back to my workout regimen. But, well, my name is Khalif J. I've worked with Dr. Blaylock for the last 2 years. Just such a great person, great friend, very informative, always on beat on helping people and moving forward. So I do want to tell her that I appreciate for her inviting me to this meeting as well. I'm a high school teacher, and I've done a lot of things, right now, I currently teach high school. I've taught college at FSCJ, mathematics from the Algebra 1 all the way to the calculus. This past year, I was Teacher of the Year for West Side, and also for the county, I was the Spotlight Teacher of the Year. I've been teaching for about 12 years, but I'm also an entrepreneur. I've owned cell phone stores with Metro PCS before they even launched. I've opened up gas stations. I've consulted. I've done a lot of different things, and also with the young lady that was just on, I've coached high school and also assist coach in college. So I have a little bit of everything. I usually just try to find whatever niche I'm feeling at that time, and I just do it. And I just research it and I go for it. So by listening to the conversations relating to diversity, I get a chance to work with diverse individuals, diverse students, diverse adults every day. And what I like to do is just learn from the conversations and maybe add on to it as we go. But one of my biggest things that I like to do is just learn. So I may be quiet majority of the time because I'm just learning. And if I, find something that I think that I can add access to the group, I'll go ahead and speak. But majority of the time, I just want to learn. And I'm happy to be here with all the professionals here that can provide valuable information, not just for me, but for everyone else in here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I want to share two other quick things, and then if we can let Heather say hello. Heather's got all those flags behind her, so she's representing very culturally diverse as well. But real quickly on Christy and I had the opportunity. She actually, I've shared in the previous session that my daughter learns differently and had some challenges in high school. And Christy was one of those teachers who changed her life and was transformational in her journey. And so we've remained close. And she and I actually worked on a grant together when I was a vice president at a community college. And I had a vision to use the grant money to create a digital literacy and workforce readiness boot camp. And that's how we became very close with the public housing authority that she's talking about. And a lot of times in affluent areas, we forget about the disenfranchised, right? We see all the prosperity and the growth. And yet McKinney, Texas, has a population of people who need advocacy. And one of my favorite stories is a grandmother who had been, I forget, actually most of the people in our first session, our first workforce readiness boot camp, were second career or Bravo career people. And so there was a grandmother. And so we wanted to make sure that they knew how to use computers, computer applications in the workplace. And I cannot remember her name. Was it Benita? But she still sends me messages on LinkedIn. We made them all create LinkedIn, and she knew how to use a mouse. That was like her biggest achievement. And she took it again. And I tell you what, she can now do Excel spreadsheets. I hate Excel spreadsheets. I know they're like Messiah and everyone loves Excel. I have to Google or YouTube how to do a DAGNAB formula every time. And then I want to share about Khalif, who is a man of many talents. He talks about his quiet strength, and that's one of the things I admire most about him. We had the opportunity, he was a leader in a program with, Jacksonville has a high level of poverty, and like I said, Title I schools. And so I was a part of the Mayor Summer Jobs Program. And we had several justice-involved youth. And I know that's something we may talk about as we also expand and really look at advocacy. And so in Jacksonville, because there's high crime rate in the youth space and there's homicides and things of that nature, it's essentially like every story you read is about how bad the kids are and all these terrible things. And so if you've noticed lately, street art is now like a cool thing, right? Remember back when you used to get arrested for street art and had these graffiti artists and they were the rebels and the people on the outside, right? Well, it's become a thing of beauty now. And all over Jacksonville, there's these phenomenal pieces of art. That's what they are. They're art, and they're free art, and they're very liberating. And so I had shared with Khalif that one of my visions was to have each of our teens who all came from the most diverse backgrounds. I mean, we have kids in Jacksonville who have never been to the beach, right? And then we have kids who have never been downtown because it's not safe. So we were able to bring them together, and Khalif helped me do that. And again, we had justice-involved youth. And I have to tell you, for many of the kids, we have one young man who is actually currently incarcerated and serving 6 months in a treatment program. And these are kids, some of the other kids who now know him never would have known him. They're in honors classes, that's not their world, but they see that he has value and he's just like them. He made a decision, it was the wrong decision, and that's okay. It doesn't devalue him as a human being. But at any rate, we did a photography project where we let each of the youth pick their own street art and tell their story. And Khalif and I actually made a book, and we'll have to share it with the group. It is some compelling photography. His artistic eye is incredible. And there's some, and just the diversity of the students and their stories are, wow, it will bring a tear to your eye. So I wanna definitely have opportunity to share that. And then finally, Heather Yush is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. She previously was over transfer at the Louisiana State University, or LSU. And she now works for Phi Theta Kappa, which is the International Honor Society of Community Colleges, and works with students of all ages and backgrounds. So Heather, do you want to say hello?
Hey, Jennifer, can you guys hear me? Yeah, thank you. I wanted to just pop in and see what y'all were talking about today. So thanks for the chance to talk. But yeah, I actually work quite a bit with community college students, and sometimes, you know, those high achievers that are still in high school and pursuing college credit, which is truly amazing to me that someone in high school would be able to get themselves to a point where they could graduate with an associate degree at the same time they get a high school diploma. But I really enjoy working with students that are part of Phi Theta Kappa, which is basically an honor society where we just recognize students who are showing academic promise, and we really provide as many resources as we can to help those students continue that upward trajectory that they're already on, and hopefully provide them with opportunities that are even better than what they had when they were looking to, you know, go to college out of high school. You know, perhaps a couple years in community or technical college, and you know, they can get themselves a really good opportunity to go onto a four-year school that maybe is even better than what they had coming out of high school. So very diverse, you know, community college students are the most diverse students in higher education. And our community colleges serve students who are from first generation families, from lower income backgrounds, you know, first in the family, you know, to go to college, and really we're very proud to be able to support that as a community that is really accessible to students from all walks of life. Lots of students that have Pell eligibility and are receiving some financial aid. So, you know, really, we know that these are the students that we're truly able to change their lives in a positive way. And those are the students that we hope to impact for hopefully 100 more years through Phi Theta Kappa.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank Jennifer, Dr. Ballock. We are very appreciative of what you are doing. You are actually moving mountain out there. So Reggie, I think this will give you hope that some people are moving mountain out there. So that's part of the equation. And we are going a little bit over, but it's worth it. So I want to ask our panelists to, you know, give us some closing remarks, and then the discussion continues. If you could begin, let's begin with Kenita, please.
All right. Well, thank you so much, you guys. I've just been so blessed by our time together. I guess in closing, I just want to say, you know, keep leading the change. Whatever it looks like in your own space, whatever it looks like in your relationships, your conversations, keep leading the change. And I think that would be the action that we're all hoping to have collectively and individually. For more information on what we do at SEMA Global Consulting, I invite you again to come to my website and shoot me a note to say hi, because this extrovert sitting in this house is needing some visitors. And that would show inclusion, right? So thanks again.
Thank you very much. David?
Well, obviously, it's a pleasure every time I get to join one of these calls. And I understand Reggie's concern that we as a group, SDIG, want to get to the phase where we're doing things that are happening. And we're working towards that. In the meantime, let's go back to the theme that was said earlier about self-control and self-improvement. I thought three things. One, let's all commit to getting out of our homogeneous environments periodically when we're able to travel again or go into other communities, because we do tend to live in our own spheres and be comfortable there. Secondly, practice inclusiveness, and that doesn't mean just in terms of numbers and makeup, but also in terms of allowing people to participate, invite new participation into your lives from other people. And then thirdly, allow yourself to be vulnerable so that others can learn from your vulnerability and your stories that you have to share and those type of things. If you want to learn more about me, it's parityconsultant.com.
Colonel Reggie, go.
I don't know why you insist on calling me Colonel Reggie, but I accepted Dr. Warrior.
It makes us feel good.
Oh, it makes you feel good? Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. So let me just say, we are stronger together, period. Right. I just finished coaching a student this morning, just before coming on this call, a resilience leadership building student. And I coach someone almost every day now, right? And what I am trying to teach them, show them is, again, get out of your own way. People are looking toward you for inspiration. They're looking for the inspiration that Christy is giving through her unselfish act, or that Martin or whoever. They're looking for us to show them the way. Even if they don't know they're looking, they still see it. We are stronger together.
Thank you so much. And Martin, thank you very much for coming. And Jennifer, are you still there?
I am. Yes, sir.
Well, I want to thank you especially, and want to thank all of you. And I think, you know, we already know where we are heading. We just have to put all those tap roots. And then, as they say where I came from, when you have a good foundation, you could go anywhere. If you have a foundation that isn't good, it's not going to go far. They say if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go more productively, you go together. So we will be talking more, and we will begin to lay the foundation. And regional, you're going to be putting your own effort, and we're going to all be moving it in the right direction. Within a short time, there's a saying that goes, one who is wondering would eventually see the wonders, you know, unfolding. So look forward to working with you. All I need from you is whatever ideas you have, bring it together. Then we can form that collage that will move mountains. And on that note, unless of course you have something else, then you go ahead. Otherwise, we will come to a close, if you will.
Have a good day.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Have a good
morning,
day.
Martin. Have a good morning, Martin.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
I'm going to leave a final comment. Cut the corners that you want to cut. My husband accuses me of doing hallway vacuuming. I only go in straight lines. I only miss the corners. But the corners I don't want to touch. I only focus on what you really want to do.
I like it.
All right. All right. That's good.
Bye, everyone.
All right. See ya.
All right.
Thank you.
Stay safe
Bye.
and healthy.
Thank you.
Same good.
Bye.
All right.